I attended a meeting at Tryp offices with the CEO and some of their head marketers with other rideshare Uber tubers. And these are the negative impressions I took away from it. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and this is actually the second part of a two-part series where I discuss a meeting I had with Tryp executives and their CEO with other Uber tubers. Now, as I explained in my other video, but I will repeat here just in case this is the first part you're seeing. When I put the introductory video of what the overall meeting was like, I was summarizing it, but I wasn't giving my full opinion on either side. People pointed out, be careful what you endorse because your reputation is on the line and you don't want your reputation to be shattered. And I'm taking that to heart, but I am a journalist of some sort, so I was going to go to these meetings. Now, I have made the video talking about all of the nice things and that I took from it, and I definitely encourage you to watch that in addition to this, whether it be after this or before you watch this one. I just recommend you watch it. That said, I had some very, very, very big concerns as well. I had some very positive reactions. These are the negatives. And we're going to start with the first negative in that it does seem sort of like a pyramid scheme. I'm not saying it is, but it sure seems that way with the referral thing that they've got. They tell you that the driver can buy this membership and it's $200 a month. And if you refer this many people, you will get this bonus. You will get it forever. That is very reminiscent of Mary Kay. For those of you who do not know what Mary Kay is, it is a beauty. I don't know why my calendar is notifying me. Now my calendar is notifying me of notifications now. Well, anyway, I'm not going to cut it out. Mary Kay is a company that sells products. They sell beauty products, moisturizer, all that stuff. And the problem with Mary Kay is that they sell so many products and they have reps that come to your door saying you can make this much money if you sell this much stuff. The problem is you're rarely going to make that many sales. And what the reps aren't telling you is that they make more money selling you on the membership than they do selling products. In fact, most of them don't even sell products. They're most successful Mary Kay employees who have the Mary Kay car and who have the suit and have all the perks. They make their money through referrals, not by selling the product. That can be a problem, especially if a bunch of people buy into this and they don't get it. But Mary Kay is pretty big, and there's a pretty good sense that most people want beauty products. And while there is a sense that most people want to do rideshare, that comes in with the second problem in that Tryp is going to have a very, very hard time competing with Uber and Lyft because Uber and Lyft have Uber Pool and Lyft Line. Super, super cheap options, and you press the button and they are there within 2 to 5 minutes. Sometimes they're right there as they were in Vegas when at the Caesars Palace I called a Lyft and they were already there. They were just waiting at the curb. You're not going to have that with Tryp. And in an industry where I would get calls, the person would be here, I'm heading this way, I just have to turn around, they cancel when they see that I'm even inching away from them within a few seconds. It's going to be very, very hard to convince those people to try Tryp. What's more, when you have no surge on Tryp, that means one of the Uber tubers, and I'm not going to name them just because I don't want to throw anyone under the bus just in case I'm using this comment. Because I'm using this comment as a negative. They intended it as a positive. Where he pointed out that at 1 in the morning, you turn on all the apps, Tryp is always going to be the cheapest one because there's no surge. And it might even make Uber and Lyft surge more. Well, yeah, that is one of the positives that I mentioned in the positive video, but here's the negative to that. It's going to encourage people to turn off the Tryp apps and drive for Uber and Lyft, because this is why surge is that necessary evil. Because surge, as much as we hate it, convinces drivers to drive those bad hours and those unsavory hours and those undesirable hours. With surge, staying up till 3:30 in the morning when I was doing this full-time for the most part was desirable, where it otherwise would not have been. Tryp is not going to be desirable to drive at 2 in the morning because it's not surging, and I know I can make more money on the other platforms. Since we're talking about that as well, let's go back for a second to the $200. Now, I mentioned why that was a good thing, but here's one of the reasons it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing because some drivers cannot afford that $200. They just can't afford to do it. What's more, they are asking people to pay $200 for a service that isn't proven. I asked them during the meeting if they plan to do a free trial, and everyone, including my fellow UberTubers, said no, there's no reason because people aren't sure. They might not even drive during the 2-week trial. And my thinking to this was, but if you're going to want the serious drivers to see if they can make money. And if the serious drivers can see that they can make money, then maybe they'd be more willing to put down the money. As it stands, I don't think you're going to get a lot of drivers to just simply put down that money unless you're like me and you can deduct it as a business expense because you're reviewing the product. Otherwise, I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to convince people to do. What's more, this $200 is reoccurring, and there are some months that are slower than others. I would, of course, recommend that the first 2 months be half off or something like that, just to kind of get people settled into it. And if they like it, then they might be more willing to pay the $200. And if they're not, they're probably not serious enough for you to want them on your platform in the first place. And what about those stock options? Well, here's the thing. While that is always a good thing, and I always encourage companies to give their employees equity, it depends what kind of stock options these are. After all, and I'm sorry for the humming in the background, I'm just noticing it, but you might recall that Juno sold themselves on stock options. You're going to own a piece of the company. When we get bought out, you make money. And the pitch was very similar in this room. And here was the problem with comparing it to Juno. Juno screwed everyone. They gave them a special type of stock that was worth far less than what the company was worth when they got bought out by Get, which I'm still not sure why Get bought them. I don't know what they got out of that. But anyway, so a lot of people thought they were building up hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of stock to find out they made $20. All that time, all that effort, all that wear and tear, all that promoting for $20, maybe $50. That has made the stock options very suspicious whenever a rideshare company actually proposes it. Because we've been there before and we got screwed before. And it's just not going to happen. Here's the other bad thing. As much as I like the, promotional thing like the referral bonus, how can we be sure that they're going to keep their word? Right now, Uber and Lyft aren't even entirely honest about who's signing up through your referral code and who's not. How do we know that they're going to actually be honest about their referral code? Here's another thing. I mentioned in the other video that there was a suggestion I made to them, and we all made to them actually. Actually, I think other people made it first, and I echoed the sentiment in all fairness. And they seem to be seriously considering it. But if they don't do that, they're effectively going to be no different than Uber or Lyft. Here's another bad thing. They did not give me a very confident response when I asked them, how are you going to convince people to stop using Uber and Lyft and use Tryp? They did not offer me a marketing budget. They did not show me any commercials. Their whole thing was the drivers and word of mouth. And yes, they were right. Uber and Lyft was built on word of mouth. So was MoviePass initially, before they went to, $10. Word of mouth can be very, very powerful tools, but here's the thing. It is very hard to convince people to jump from something they know so well to something that they don't know so well. For example, I told people all the time, if you want to watch real movies and get some really interesting stuff, you need to sign up for Filmstruck, which is now defunct, and Fandor, which thankfully is still around. And people's reaction was, do they have friends? Now, this is why that's important. The reason it's important is that it doesn't matter how much better the stuff on those services are. People like what's familiar. Uber and Lyft are very familiar right now. And people are used to the way the system works. They're used to not waiting. They're used to the interface. Tryp has to convince people to give those things up. That is a very, very, very difficult thing to do. A very difficult thing to do. Here's the final thing. At least I think this is the final thing. I might have missed something. And I'm sure people will let me know if I missed discussing something. But the thing that probably made me the most concerned coming out of this meeting was when one of them asked, so do you have an app to show us? What's it look like? And they said, we don't have the app to show you. It's not finished yet. Now, let's make this absolutely clear. You don't need to have an app to, right now, because we are no one. In a sense, we are. We're not investors. We're not, stockholders. They didn't ask us for any money at the end of the day. So technically, they can just tell us the idea and that should be fine. Here's the problem. The fact that they didn't have a product to show us, not even a prototype, does make you wonder how far along they really are and what they have got planned. Dave, the Uber slave, pointed out they didn't even have a website, and they put a website up in response to that complaint. The website is, it looks okay, but it's not the most sophisticated thing I've ever seen, to put it lightly. And it seems like right now, because they didn't have the website until fairly recently, they don't have the app. They're not telling us all the hard answers about how they're going to court customers and what happens with the feedback. And although they did say one thing about, disputes that was very positive, in that they're actually going to track people who make, complaints, and people who make too many complaints about a certain thing might get deactivated. That's nice. But they didn't have these things ready. And we don't have them ready. It's bothersome. Like, let's take the Switch, for example. I'm sure this was not the first design. I'm sure they had a prototype. But when they went to the president of Nintendo and said, we need to start working on a new system, they had some sort of prototype for what this would look like. They had a sketch. They had something. The Tryp people didn't show us anything. They didn't show us a commercial. They didn't show us an app. They didn't show us a sketch, like blueprints or whatever. And so at the end of the day, there was a sense that this is a lot of talk. And I would like to be wrong about that, but maybe it is. I don't know. Now, I have invited them onto my podcast, and if you guys have any serious hardcore questions, of course you can leave them in the comments below. We will ask them if they agree to come onto the show after all of this. Again, if you guys are just watching this, I made a positive video as well, so watch that as well. I'm not completely against you. But this is enough to make me really pause and say, I don't know if I want to jump into this just yet. I've got some very big and healthy skepticism about the whole project. It's one of those situations where it's like, I hope it works. I'm a little concerned it won't. I remember the days when I got so excited about Juno, and everyone got a goose egg on that one. So I'm approaching this with a little bit more trepidation. But that's where I'm going to leave it now. What do you folks think? Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts? I would love to know. So comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, of course, but even those $1 a month goes a long way to helping the channel run smoothly. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.